Originally from France, but I'm currently working at Macquarie University in Australia, and I'm going to present a talk entitled Tracking Indicators of Our Environmental Crisis by Means of Art, a Psychological Approach. I'm a philosopher of cognitive science, which is not really strongly connected to environmental art. I will present a talk that will have all sorts of typical defects of philosophical talks, a little bit too abstract, and so I'm very pleased that we had a lot of very wonderful examples in the two previous talks. And I'm going to focus on conceptual issues, theoretical issues related to the question of can we identify the functions of environmental art. And I will argue that we can, and I will add that an essential function of environmental art relates to the tracking of indicators of environmental crisis. And just a note, when I talk about functions, I'm using a concept that I borrow from the philosophy of science, where a function can be defined as an effect of something that is reproduced over the history of this something, and leads to the production and preservation of this something, because it has certain effects that serve on a need or a value. But if you don't like the notion of function, you can replace it by the notion of a role. But I will assume as background thesis that works of environmental art have varieties of mental and societal functions. And the way I want to justify this view is by developing a theory that I term the psycho-historical theory of art, and that is going to be the theory that I will use to defend this kind of view, which is a theory I'm developing independently of my interest in environmental issues, but that I think can be useful to model certain problems, conceptual problems that are relevant to the conference. I will start by presenting an exhibition that is an imaginary exhibition, where you have like just 8 red squares. This is an exhibition imagined by one of the most distinguished philosophers of art, Arthur Danto, and you might be disappointed. That's not at all the kind of exhibition you want to see in this kind of conference. There's no landscape. There's some kind of remnant of minimalism or formalism that doesn't seem relevant. But if we go a little bit further, the first piece is Israelites. I'm just quoting Danto. Israelites crossing the Red Sea by Soren Kierkegaard, and the explanation is that the Israelites had already crossed over and the Egyptians were drowned. And in the second piece, this is a portrait, Kierkegaard's Mood, by a Danish portraitist. The third piece is Red Square, a representation of a place in Moscow. The fourth is Nirvana, a metaphysical painting. The seventh is Red Tablecloth by an embittered disciple of Matisse. The fifth is just a canvas prepared with red lead. Seventh, it's a non-artistic artifact chosen by Danto. And the last one is a copy of the non-artistic artifact by an artist who was really upset that Danto refused the status of work of art to this piece. So, what was the point of this imaginary exhibition? Is that we have 8 completely similar things, look-alikes, that in fact are completely different in terms of their historical identities and their functions. So the point is that the defining properties of an artwork for Danto are historical and context-specific. That's his important contribution in philosophical aesthetics. It's the origin of contextualism in aesthetics. So this is the key insight provided by Danto, and it is based on the idea that the defining properties or functions of works of art depend on relations between facts of the original art historical context of the work, such as the artist's previous works or intentions, environmental or political events, or art history and artistic genres. Now, this historical approach to the notion of work of art, or to the identity of a work of art, is something that is not at all influential in the field of the psychology or neuroscience of art, which is something I'm interested in independently. So my project is to try to combine the historical approach, which is dominant in humanities and social sciences, with a psychological approach that is founded, warranted by the work of psychologists and neuroscientists nowadays who are studying responses to art. So this is my theoretical project. I will explain the theory by taking the example of just one artistic example, which is the works by Eugene Smith about Minamata. Just need to drink. Eugene Smith, the photographer, has documented the poisoning that occurred in the Japanese city of Minamata from the 50s to the 70s. But that is an environmental crisis that is still going on. And I consider this to be like a masterpiece of environmental art. And so I'm interested in how can we grasp an understanding of the function of this kind of artwork and the connections between the artwork, the social context, and our aesthetic responses to this kind of work. So here is the way the theory work. The theory work is based on articulating like a historical model of the production of a work of art with a psychological model of the appreciation of this work of art. So what do I mean by art historical context? I mean the different agents whose interactions are at the origin of the production of a work of art. Of course, there's the artist, but there's also artistic institutions, historical processes, social norms, and so forth. So the artist produces a work of art. For instance, in the case of Eugene Smith, it's the photographs of victims of the Minamata poisoning, and these works are artifacts that are broadcast in different channels for presenting the work to an audience. So this is the generation, the very simple picture of a generation of a work of art. But with respect to appreciation, when, as a member of the audience, of the public, one encounters the work, we just perceive the work and we're placed in a situation where we are exposed to the work. This is what I term the basic exposure to the work. We develop a perceptual sensitivity to the work or to reproduction of this work. But in this mode of appreciation, there is no development of a knowledge of the underlying history, causal history, or ancestry of the work. The second mode of appreciation in this model is what I term the artistic design stance. And by design stance, I refer to the work of a philosopher of mine whose name is Daniel Dennett. And by this I simply mean that as an appreciator of this work, we start to develop a sensitivity to the causal history of the work by inquiring on its causal history, on its historical origin, on the production of this work. And this adoption of the design stance leads to a third mode of appreciation that I term artistic understanding, based on developing an explanation of the status and identity of the work based on the knowledge of the art historical context. And then it becomes a loop in the sense that appreciation is based on an understanding of the generation of the work. So this is the complete model, and now I want to just mention, or I suggest that this kind of approach can be applied to addressing the question about the functions of environmental art. I will take the example of two functions. The first one is what I term the broadcast or tracking function, which is, if you take the example of the Minimata work by Eugene Smith, the environmental and historical processes that are linked to the actual historical events as something that, as an audience far away from the events, we are not connected to, we are not sensitive to. But by means of the work, of the broadcast function of the work, the artist is transmitting information about this crisis through, by means of the artistic media that he is using, photography in the case of Eugene Smith. And then, as an appreciator, we may engage in these three different modes of appreciation that might lead to an understanding of the environmental crisis as a contextual event. And yeah. So, in a sense, broadcasting information about an environmental crisis is something that scientists do and might do better than artists in certain methodological respects. But I think that a number of reasons why the role of artists is important with respect to this tracking function or broadcasting function. One of them is many environmental crises are often, with respect to their ontology, they are events that we cannot directly perceive or be immediately aware of. And many works of art are, in environmental art, are ways of revealing or making visible or perceptible all sorts of events or relationships that are not immediately perceivable. And artists have a way specifically powerful to do this kind of work on making visible or perceivable or sensible certain facts. But the other important aspect that is not part of the work of scientists is that we can apprehend the works of art by scientists as devices for manipulating emotions of people in the audience. So not only the works will provide information about certain events or crises, but they will provide reasons to experience certain kinds of emotions. And these emotions I think, can be viewed as sources of motivation for action, because this is, there's good reasons to think that a biological function of emotion is to motivate actions. And therefore, if it's true that one of the functions of works of art in environmental art is to manipulate emotions and to, do certain experiments to control emotions, then maybe we have a key to this problem that is central to this conference, which is, how can artists be agents of change or political change and so forth? Because maybe that's through this broadcasting information aimed at a certain manipulation of emotions that artists can achieve a role of agents of political change. And one concluding remark, I just have 1 minute, is that I can't go into the details right now, but under this kind of view, there are very two different ways to be emotionally related to work. At the level of basic exposure to work, you have an immediate response that will be completely different than the response you have if you are in the mode of artistic understanding based on a knowledge of the historical and ecological process of the crisis or the event. And I think it's an important point because it means that knowledge has a role to play. And it's not enough to say just what matters, just responding emotionally. It depends on what is motivating our emotions. So, to conclude, I presented an approach to art and environmental art, which is the psychohistorical theory that's trying to integrate the psychological approach and the historical approach to art theory, a framework in which we can develop an analysis of the functions of environmental art, and that might help to understand how artists engage in environmental art act as agents of political change by contributing to the public's awareness of environmental crisis, namely for this reason, because works of environmental art are often used broadcasting or tracking procedures that elicit emotions, which in turn motivate critical thinking and political action. Thank you.